Hello everyone, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Core i7 12700KF. That's right, I decided to go and upgrade the CPU. I did have a bit of disposable income, given that I'd worked quite a lot of overtime, and the Steam Deck was delayed to next year, so I spent the Steam Deck money on a new CPU, and I ended up accruing over £250 worth of Amazon vouchers. So that paid for the motherboard, and the Steam Deck was about 400 odd pounds. So we managed to get a hold of the i7 12700KF. I should point out the differences from the K are the KF has a slightly lower boosted clock speed, and it has no iGPU, so I don't really have a need for an iGPU, to be honest, because you're running a gaming PC. We've got a dedicated GPU in there, and the lower clock speed isn't something that really is going to bother me, to be honest, because we can always overclock it. It's still a K series CPU. I think it does have, slightly. I think it turbos up to 4.9, the K, and the KF turbo's up to 4.7. It's not much of a difference. You could push it all-core turbo anyway to 5 gigahertz if you wanted to. So yeah, we decided to go for the upgrade. Struggling in some games on the Ryzen 7 3700X. That's what I upgraded from. And as you can see, we're running Horizon Zero Dawn on ultra settings. Still got the 3080 Ti. It was just the CPU motherboard. I added another 16 gigs of RAM in there because, again, I had disposable income. So I decided just to go for that and spent my Steam Deck money, because the Steam Deck isn't coming out until Q2 2022 is when mine, or I'm going to get mine, so we can always, use that. We had money burning a hole in our pocket, disposable income. Again, I did work hard. Every 5 hours of overtime that you did, you got a £25 Amazon voucher. So I managed to accrue £250 worth. So that paid for the motherboard. I went with the Gigabyte Z690 Gaming X. Could have got the Aor's one, but it was an extra 30 quid. And honestly, I don't really need debug features. And there wasn't much. We're not running like an i9, so the power delivery, not overly important. We're just going to run this probably at stock for mostly. Horizon Zero Dawn runs fine. It's got 144 FPS cap. This is DLSS quality mode, in case you're wondering. With DLSS, it's 152 FPS average in the benchmark. Without it's 160 with DLSS, 152 without. So not much of a difference there in Horizon Zero Dawn. It does like cores and threads. So the way the i7 works is they have split the cores. It is 12 cores and 20 threads. So it does have some of the cores are hyper-threaded and some aren't. So you've got the 8 cores and 16 threads. They are known as the P cores, or the performance cores. They're just represented on the side there by like CPU 1 to CPU 16 there. And then you've got 4 additional cores, which are referred to as E cores or efficiency cores. Now the E cores are capped at 3.6 gigahertz, and there's 4 of them in the Ryzen 7. The Ryzen 9 has 6, I believe. So you get an extra 4 cores. These are 4 cores, 4 threads. Lower power. The idea is that the P cores are going to do the intense workloads like gaming, etc. Gaming, productivity, and the E cores can run in the background operating system tasks. So that way you get 8 cores and 16 threads available for gaming, and the idea is the operating system can run in the background and just sit there and just do this sort of mundane basic tasks. It saves power on the system as well, but again, Windows 10 doesn't utilize these properly. Windows 11 tends to be better. I am running Windows 10. I haven't upgraded to Windows 11 yet, but yeah, Windows 10 has a scheduler which can tell the difference between the P cores and the E cores, and the scheduler can move the workloads around more efficiently. So Windows 11 tends to give you better performance from Alder Lake. We will also discuss the installation process, I guess, for Alder Lake. Now, the problem with Alder Lake is it is a new platform and it is a new socket LGA 1700 it is. And the problem is a lot of coolers just aren't compatible with it. I tried my Corsair H100i. I bought the new standoff screws for it. It didn't mount correctly. So as soon as I booted the system in the BIOS, it went straight to 98 degrees C because there wasn't enough mounting pressure at the back. You could put your finger on it and push it in, the cold plate into the CPU, and the temperature would drop instantly down to like 50 degrees. But in the end, we had to buy. I bought an Arctic Liquid Freezer 2, 280 mil. I bought, which is two 140 mil fans. Could have got the 360 one, which is three 120 mil fans. But I decided I like bigger fans because generally they're quieter. Two 140 mil fans. I couldn't mount it on the top. That was one of the problems because the radiator is just too big. So that's one of the problems that you have with that CPU cooler there, is you just can't mount it on the top. We had to mount it at the side, which is a bit disappointing because the radiator is really thick, but it does run really well, as you can see by the temperatures. Nice and cool, actually. Again, we've not overclocked it. We could push the all-core turbo right up to 5 gigahertz if I wanted to. But I decided we'll just leave it at stock for now. It runs games fine. If it gets a little bit to the point where it starts to struggle, we'll push it up higher. I thought that in benchmarks it wouldn't be that much different from the Ryzen 7. I do have Guardians of the Galaxy benchmark, and as you can see, it is a massive improvement over the Ryzen 7, particularly in the lower frame rate. The Ryzen 7 3700X, it was kind of starting to struggle. Games like Halo Infinite were kind of getting a bit CPU limited on the 3080 Ti, but other than that, everything else is the same. Bought a new case as well. I went for the Corsair 5000D, which again just wasn't big enough to house the radiator on the top, so we had to go with it on the side. Luckily, it's got plate. We could have tried mounting it on the... Well, I mounted it on the front. We could have mounted it on the side panel. I tried that, but I couldn't really get it to fit correctly either. So we went with the front panel, where it's now an extractor fan. We've also gone for a negative case pressure point of view. We've gone for negative case pressure, which does actually help the GPU a little bit, because all the air coming into the case is now coming from where it gets to the GPU fan first. So the GPU fan does run a bit cooler there. So that is something else to try. It is a benefit to the GPU. The CPU is nice and cool. It's fine as well. The only thing that gets a little bit hotter are the SSDs. That's the only thing that gets a little bit hotter. But we're going to check out some modern games. To be honest, modern gaming is kind of boring, really. So we're going to check out some emulation performance. Because this is really a beast when it comes to emulation. PS3, 360, Wii, Switch. It really is a decent CPU. Okay, so we'll start with Metal Gear Solid 4, and as you can see, it still doesn't work. The audio doesn't work when you're in game. The cutscenes work fine, so I guess the majority of the game works, because the majority of MGS4 is cutscenes. But yeah, you get no sound in game, so gunfire, things like the alert theme, the boing, and then the little twing alert thing, the little alert ping, that doesn't work either. So nothing really works. Try holding people up, though, in the game without any audio. But yes, it doesn't run very well. A little bit better than the Ryzen 7, but other than that, we're just searching this guy. I forget what the buttons are in MGS4 anyway. So pretty much unplayable, I would say, still, as, you know, the frame rate is just kind of... It's too low to be playable, and you can't play it without the audio anyway. Okay, so Red Dead Redemption, on the other hand, a game that wasn't playable on the Ryzen 7 3700X is playable on the i7 12700KF. Interestingly enough, this is RPCS3. It's running at native resolution. The frame rate is capped, what we'll do is we'll check it out on the Xbox 360 emulator, because you can turn off VSync in that. And let's see if we can get 60 FPS out of Red Dead Redemption then. Okay, so yes, you can get this to run at 60 FPS. This is Xenia Master, so we're running the Xbox 360 version. Weirdly, it's capped at like 64 FPS, and it will have dips occasionally. When you go into towns and cities, or towns in the game, there's not really any cities, and there is one city in Red Dead Redemption, is there? So this is 720p as well, and once again, there is still the issue, the foliage kind of pops in and out of, but it is in and out of existence, but it is playable. It certainly is playable at 60 FPS. Again, there will be dips down below that. It tends to probably sit between 40 and 60 FPS, and there is that little bug with the foliage, but the game is certainly playable. It's certainly more playable than it was on the Ryzen 7. You can get it riding out into the countryside. We will do a full video on, I think we've got about an hour's worth of footage in Red Dead Redemption 2, so we will do a further video on this just to show you. But yes, it is not a locked 64 FPS, but it is 60 FPS at least. The frame time is a bit dodgy, but it definitely feels a lot better to play at a higher frame rate. And it is good that we can get this at least kind of, not perfect, but at least it's playable. Alright, so let's move on to CEMU then, and this is Bayonetta 2 with the 4K patch. So it is 4K, 60 FPS. It really does hammer 2 of those CPU cores. That's the thing about emulation. It's not really an all-core workout like Horizon Zero Dawn is. Emulation tends to hammer single core, and this runs really well. The cutscenes are still locked at 30 FPS, although there is a patch for that in CEMU to get the cutscenes to run at 30 FPS, but the audio issues have been fixed. I did try this a few years ago and it did have audio issues, but everything's been fixed, and yeah, you can see here how it kind of hard cuts to 30 FPS whenever you get a cutscene there, but it will go back up to 60 in gameplay. But yeah, that is not too bad. Bayonetta 2. Bayonetta 2 is also available on the Nintendo Switch, so let's go check out the Nintendo Switch emulation then, see if it's any better. Okay, so this is the Switch version running on Yuzu. It is a bit lighter on the CPU. I don't have the MSI Afterburner statistics, or the RTSS statistics up on this. It's a bit fiddly to get it to work on Yuzu, but it does run at full speed, 60 FPS. Now, Yuzu doesn't have resolution scaling, so it is limited to 720p and 60 FPS. There are also some frame pacing issues on Yuzu. It is a newer emulator than CEMU, so my advice to you is, if your CPU can handle CEMU, because it is a lot heavier on the CPU, whereas Yuzu is a bit lighter on the CPU. It only runs at 3.6 gigahertz as opposed to the 4.7 gigahertz. But yeah, Bayonetta is playable on Yuzu. I can't really show you any Nintendo game footage either, but you can play games like Metroid Dread, that plays fine. New Super Mario Brothers U, or whatever that one, the remake of New Super Mario Brothers U, that plays fine. Mario Odyssey as well, and we were playing the Zelda, what one was it again? The one that was the Game Boy one, I can't remember what it was called. I had a 60 FPS patch, but the problem with Switch games is they have to be patched individually for resolution, and Bayonetta 2 just doesn't have a patch for it. So if you really care, if you've got maybe a lower end CPU, then try the Switch version, because the Switch version is a bit lighter on the CPU there. So to try that, have a go at that. But yeah, other than that, Switch and Wii U emulation are excellent. CEMU is probably the preferred option because it is more mature. But that being said, if the game's not available on Wii U, again, what was it called? I can't remember what it was. Was it A Link Between Worlds or whatever? The one that was remade. It was a Game Boy game and they remade it on the Switch. You can have a 60 FPS patch. I can't show you it, but it runs really well. It runs at 60 FPS because I think it was 30 FPS on the Switch. But anyway, so let's move on. We'll move back to some older classic games because there is this theory that the you know the 37 the oh, sorry, the 12700 KF or Alder Lake CPUs in general just can't run old games. So we'll kind of go back and see. There are a few games though that don't run on Alder Lake though, like Star Wars: The Old Republic is one of them. We made a video on that. Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Anthem are the other two. I think there's one of the Total War games that doesn't run on Windows 11 either. That's due to DRM issues there. So it's almost perfect, the CPU. Most older games I found run. Games like Fear ran fine from 2005. Star Wars Shadows of the Empire from 1996. It ran fine. Quake, the remake of Quake, it ran fine. Again, it's using a modern API, so you'd expect that to run. And there's no real DRM in Quake. And you do get a frame rate improvement in Quake, over 1000 FPS. So yeah, the i7-12700KF, I would recommend waiting a while. I'll always say wait 6 months on a new platform. You know, if you're going to buy a new platform or like a new GPU architecture or something, wait a few months to let the platform mature and let support for the platform mature as well. Because we've seen the issue with Alder Lake in some games. But overall, it's really impressive by what it does run. So I say just wait for coolers to get the updated. I was lucky with the Arctic Liquid Freezer Pro 2, whatever it was called. I was lucky it did come with an LGA 1700, LGA 1700 mounting kit with it. Some of them have it, some of them won't. They can't guarantee it. However, if you do send proof of purchase of the CPU to Arctic, they will send you a kit for free. You can also buy the kit on Amazon. In the UK, it's $10.99 in the UK. So yeah, other than that, but overall, I was pleased with it. There are a few teething issues with the new platform, but I think, yeah, we'll probably install Windows 11. I'm going to wait a while to install Win 11 there. Just wait till later in the year to do that. Again, wait till Windows 11 settles and everything kind of matures there. So that's what I want to do with that. I'm not going to upgrade just now. So then we should get even better performance out of Alder Lake, and we'll maybe try overclocking it. If we were struggling with anything, I would overclock it, but I mean, I just don't see the purpose of overclocking it right now because everything runs fine here. But anyway, that is all for this video. So thank you for joining me. We'll see you again soon, and goodbye.